It's time to build something small and efficient. I'm talking about a mini NAS server that won't crush your power bill. In this video, I'll be turning my Beelink S13 Mini into a full-blown NAS setup. And you might remember this tiny little box from my last video. It's compact, quiet, and sips on power like a pro. But this time, I'm pushing it further and I want to store everything like my media files, documents, backups, you name it. I want to build a mini NAS PC out of this device. So what's driving this build? Well, my main server is an absolute beast, not just in performance, but in also power consumption. It burns through 150 watts of power just idling. That's because it's been overclocked, it's got a lot of hard drives on there, it's got a lot of unnecessary RGB. Mainly, I turned a gaming PC into a home server, so that's why it consumes a lot of power. But that got me thinking, what if I could create something leaner, quieter, and much more efficient? That's where this mini NAS project comes in. Can this tiny box own against a big server? Well, let's find out. Before we begin, feel free to skip to any part of this video because this is gonna be a long video. So what is a NAS? And why should you care? Well, if you ever wanted a personal cloud to store something like movies, photos, videos, or documents, or any kind of document that you want to store, then you should look into buying or building a NAS. A NAS stands for Network Attached Storage. It's basically a smart hard drive that lives on your home network, ready to serve up your files whenever you need it. And here's the cool thing, with a VPN like WireGuard, you can tap into that home network anytime you want and get your files out whenever you need them. Pretty much you can get your files from anywhere in the world. It's like having your private Dropbox or Google Drive minus the subscription fees with total and absolute privacy. Now let's talk about the setup. No, you don't need to have the exact same mini PC. You can use any PC you would like. It could be an even old desktop that you have. But in my case, since I have this mini PC, I'm using this Beelink S13 Mini because it's small, quiet, and super efficient. It has Intel N150 processor, 16 gigabytes of RAM, dual M2 slots, and all the ports you need. Now, I did swap out the stock SSD for a faster 1TB NVMe SSD because the original SSD is kind of slow. But this is totally optional, but definitely worth an upgrade for a smoother performance. For storage, I'm using a dual bay external enclosure by CentMate. It comes with multiple modes like RAID 0, JBOD, or just a bunch of drives, and RAID 1. For data redundancy, I'm going to be using this device in RAID 1 mode. That means if one drive were to fail, you would still have a backup or a copy of your data on the other drive. For the drives themselves, I'm using 4TB Western Digital RAID drives. With this enclosure, you can get up to 20 terabytes per drive if you want, so 40 terabytes in total if you're using in JBOD mode. But I haven't personally tested that, so I can't confirm. All right, let's talk about the different ways we can install a NAS operating system on this device. And trust me, there are a lot of ways to do it. Some are smoother than others, and some are complicated. First up, if you like doing things the hard way, sort of like I do, you can install Proxmox and then run TrueNAS Scale as a virtual machine and pass through your hard drives, and then mount your hard drives onto that. That's actually how my big server is set up. Instead of messing with complex setups with Proxmox, we're gonna keep it very simple. We're gonna be installing Ubuntu, and then on top of that, we're gonna be throwing CasaOS. It's probably the easiest way to get a NAS set up and up and running without diving into deep technical details. CasaOS is clean, lightweight, and beginner friendly. You just boot it up and install it with a single command, and then there you go, it's up and running. You can share your files within a few clicks. Now, to get this rolling, I had to create a bootable Linux USB drive. There are many tutorials out there that you can use to make a live Ubuntu bootable disk, but I personally use a tool called Ventoy. This is amazing because I can install Ventoy onto the flash drive, and then all I gotta do is copy over the ISOs that I want on my flash drive. So the benefit of having Ventoy is that you can have multiple OSs on a flash drive. All right, so we're gonna try and install our Ubuntu. Now, you don't have to use Ubuntu. You can use Debian or any other flavor of Linux. I just prefer using Ubuntu, and I'm gonna use Ubuntu server for this install. And then I'm gonna install CasaOS on top of that. So to begin, we're gonna plug in our bootable USB drive, which we created earlier. So let's go ahead and boot that up. Now, if you are using Beelink on the boot menu, you would have to press F7 so that the boot menu comes up. Here is where you can select to boot from the USB drive. So as you can see, by default, I have my USB drive and my 1TB NVMe SSD drive. So I'm gonna prefer booting from my USB drive so I can install Ubuntu on it, okay? So now using Ventoy, that's the benefit. You can install Proxmox, Ubuntu, and even Windows on this device or any other device. So in our case, I'm gonna move forward with Ubuntu and then choose boot in normal mode. Next, I'm gonna choose try and install Ubuntu server. And it's gonna take a minute or maybe less than a minute and the installation page will come up. All right, once we're at the login screen, I'm gonna choose my language. In my case, I prefer English, so choose English. Next, I wanna choose, that's fine. Next, I wanna choose what type of server I want. I just go with the very first option, hit done. Now it's gonna assign us an IP address. You can configure this and make it whatever you want. I'm fine with what it gave me. Proxy address, I don't have any, so I'm gonna just continue. Now it's testing for a mirror location, and normally we can proceed after it starts retrieving or reading package list. And now we want to choose the right disk. So by default, I also have my 4TB RAID 1 hard drive enclosure plugged in. So I want to make sure that I don't install it on that. So the very first thing I'm going to do is uncheck or unselect the use this disk as an LVM group. I don't want to do that. And I want to go in here and I want to choose my 1TB NVMe SSD as my main OS drive. So now I want to make sure that I go ahead and format my 4TB drive. Just make sure you don't have stuff that you want on that drive, because otherwise it's going to completely format it. So I'm starting fresh with everything. So I'm formatting my NVMe SSD and I'm formatting my 4TB hard drive. So to do that, navigate up to the 4TB, or in this case, 3.63 terabyte hard drive, hit that, and then hit reformat. And then, are you really sure? Yes, I'm pretty sure. Go ahead and format that. Now it's showing us we have 3.68 terabytes of free space. Our main drive will install on the NVMe bootable SSD. So we're gonna go ahead and hit done. And we're gonna hit continue. And now it's asking us for our information. So I'm gonna go ahead and put in my name. My server name is gonna be Ubuntu, Ubuntu NAS. Pick a username. For right now, I'm just gonna put administrator. So just make sure that you do this step right, because you need to remember whatever username you're putting in. ADMINISTRATOR. Choose a password, just choose a random password. All right, once you have done that, hit done. It's gonna ask us, do you wanna upgrade to Ubuntu Pro? I really don't care, I just want what's free. So hit that, install Open SSH server. So this, I like that option, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit that. So basically with Open SSH, you can remote into your Linux through command line. Hit done, hit done. I don't want any additional packages, so I'll go ahead and hit done. And now it's gonna install Ubuntu. Depending on your hardware specs, if you are using a Beelink, it should take roughly 3 to 4 minutes. But if you have some other device, it may be faster or slower depending on your specs. All right, once the installation is done, we're gonna hit reboot now. And then at this point, you wanna unplug your USB drive. And once you have done that, just press enter and the device should reboot. All right, once we have rebooted, we should be back at the login screen. Now you can go ahead and log in here. In my case, I'm gonna be using SSH so I can remote in. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is mount our 4TB external hard drive onto the machine. Right now, everything got installed on the NVMe SSD, which is great, but I wanna use the external hard drive enclosure because it's in RAID 1 mode, meaning that we have 2 hard drives in there, and if one were to fail, we will still retain our data on the other drive. So essentially, it's making copies of our data on both drives for data redundancy. So the first thing I'm gonna do is list all of my drives. So to do that, just do sudo
fdiskl. It's gonna ask us for our password. Okay, so now we have our NVMe SSD, plus we have our 4 terabyte external drive. I guess accounting for everything, it's showing up as 3.64 terabytes. That's how it is, I guess. So what we gotta do is mount this drive onto this machine and make sure every time it boots up, it remains mounted. So to do that, we have a clean blank drive right now. So first thing we're gonna do is create a GPT partition. So to do that, we're gonna run this command. I'll link everything in the description below, so don't worry about, missing this out. Or I'll provide a link to where it's nicely formatted like this. So go ahead and run. So one thing to make sure, I'm running this command, sudo parted dev sd. Now my drive up here is SDA. In your case, it could be anything, SDA1, SDA, SDB. So make sure whatever this is, it's the same thing down here. So in my case, it's SDB. I gotta change that to SDA and hit enter. It looks like everything worked fine. It says you may need to update your etc fstab. That means that, yeah, it did work. All right, now we're gonna create one big partition. So to do that, I'm gonna run another command. Again, I gotta make sure that it's got my correct drive path. In my case, it's SDA, so I'm gonna hit enter. And again, the command looks like it worked just fine. All right, now we're gonna format the partition as ext4, SDA1, not B1. All right, looks like it's running it. It may take a few seconds for it to complete. All right, so now we have formatted our drive, we have created a partition. Now we have to mount that into Linux. In Linux, I really don't like this part because it's really overcomplicated, but not really complicated. It's just too many steps you have to follow in a certain order. So I just find it very complicated versus Windows or Mac. It's very easy to mount a new drive. So anyways, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna mount this drive, but we wanna make sure that we have a unique ID. Otherwise, if we mount on SDA, SDB, tomorrow, if you plug in another drive, that order could change and break our mount. So the first thing we're gonna do is get our unique identifier for this drive. So to do that, I'm gonna go ahead and clear everything out so we can start fresh. So sudo blkid, hit that. So that's the unique identifier for our dev SDA1. So the UUID is what you wanna copy. I'm gonna copy that. And I'm gonna just open up a text editor and then paste that in here. Keep that handy, we are gonna need it in a few minutes. All right, next we're gonna do is mount our drive or provide a location where we wanna mount this. So in this case, I'm gonna mount it under the MNT data folder. You can mount it wherever you like. Best practice is to mount it inside the MNT. And this could be anything like data or hard drive, or you can call it whatever you want. I'm just gonna leave it as data. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit enter. Okay, and now we gotta edit our fstab. So here we're gonna provide the path or the mapping to where this drive should be mapped to this location. And whenever you reboot, you always gotta mount it back. So the command for that is, or not the command, the path for that is here. So basically what we're saying, this unique ID identifier should always get mounted over here. And the unique ID that we copied earlier, we're gonna copy that and then paste that in here. And keep in mind there's a space between the two. So we'll update this, copy this, and paste it in here. And for saving it, do Control S. It's saved, and to exit, just do Control X. And that's it. So now we can test to see if the drive mounted or not. So I'm gonna do sudo mount A. It looks like the drive did mount. And one way to confirm that is by running df space -h. And we can see that our dev SDA1 is mounted at MNT data and it's got 3.6 terabyte size. Available is 3.4 terabytes. So wonderful, we have successfully mounted our drive. All right, now we're ready to install CasaOS. To do that, all you gotta do is head over to CasaOS. So we'll go ahead and type Google CasaOS, and here we are. And then all you gotta do is basically copy this path or this command and come back to your terminal. I'll go ahead and clear this out. And don't run it right away because we gotta modify the version. On the latest version of CasaOS, there's a known issue where when you're transferring a large file, let's say more than 1 gigabyte, it fails to transfer at the end. It's like it goes 90% of the way and then it fails. I researched that issue and found that you have to install version 0.4.9 to be exact, and then anything less than that doesn't have that issue. It's a pretty recent version, so we're gonna continue with that. So to do that, we just have to edit the URL. So you're gonna do https get CasaOS / v for version 0.4.9. And I'll just double check to make sure. If I go to my content tracker real quick. Yep, so that's what we gotta run. All right, so I'll go ahead and hit enter. All right, and that's all you gotta do for CasaOS. It's gonna do the rest by itself. Once CasaOS installed, you're gonna be provided with a link at the end. So in this case, we can just go to our browser, type 10.0.0.25, and go full screen. And that's our CasaOS. So hit go, put in or at this point you wanna create your new account. So I'll just put my username, my password, confirm it. And hit create. All right, we are in CasaOS. Quick note, on our left, we have 2 storage paths. First one is our NVMe SSD, which is 1 terabyte. The good part is that you could put files and folders here, but then keep in mind, if this drive were to ever crash, you might lose your content. However, on this other drive, which is showing up as 1 here, but if you go under files and data, that's our external SSD that got mounted onto CasaOS, or actually the whole Linux server. Now, anything that happens here has data redundancy. It's running in RAID 1. So when you're putting stuff here, it's putting that content on 2 drives. If one was to fail, you'll have data on the other one. So I highly recommend data redundancy in this case. All right, so just to test a few things out. So anything out here, data, documents, downloads, all that's gonna get stored onto your local drive on your NVMe SSD. If you wanna store data on your hard drive, which is the 4 terabyte one, you gotta click on data, and let's make some folders. So I will go ahead and create some new folders. Call some documents, new folder, downloads, maybe some code, maybe some YouTube, maybe some movies, and maybe some TV shows. All right, so we have these now. So keep in mind the downloads here are different versus the downloads here. So what I'm gonna do is move some of my, or upload some of my code here. So you can hit upload, navigate to your location and upload it that way. Or you could just bring in that folder. So in this case, I'm gonna bring in this folder and maybe copy this over like so. See how fast that got transferred? Like, so that's not that big, but yeah, I mean, instantly it's there now on the server. So you get the point. So let's try something else. So we'll go to YouTube and we'll try to move one of my last videos over. So for my last video, I can just take these files and drag and move them here, and they'll start transferring one at a time, I guess. But right now I'm on Wi-Fi. If I connect on my LAN, the speed should be double almost. Now another thing, so let's say I am moving a big file over, right? So if I go to my YouTube, I'm gonna go ahead and clear everything out. So let's say if I'm transferring something very big, like maybe my entire last video folder, right? So if I start transferring it in, I gotta make sure I stay on this page. As you can see, it's about 74 gigabytes. So I gotta leave this page open. If I were to close the browser or refresh the page, which I'll show you right now. So if I hit the refresh, it's gonna fail my transfer because I refreshed the page and I left it there. If I go back to the data YouTube, it's got a partial incomplete data transfer. So to fix that, what we could do is we can create a share. So to do that, now I can share the entire data folder or I can share parts of the folder. So let's just say if I wanted to share my YouTube folder, I can just click on that and click on share. That's it. So if I'm on a Windows PC, I can copy that path and open it in File Explorer. Or if I'm on a Mac, I can copy that path and open up that folder. So just to give you a demo, I'll go ahead and copy the Mac path since I have a MacBook Pro. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up here. I'm gonna go ahead and terminate this. All right, so I'm gonna paste that link. So my SMB path and then the folder, and then I hit connect. It says, do you wanna connect? Yes, I do. And it's asking for a username and password. CasaOS doesn't really have that high of a security. So if you just hit guest and connect, you should mount. So now your drive is mounted over. And now I can just go to my YouTube channel and just drag and drop like that. So now it's gonna take around, it's about 79 gigabytes. It's gonna take anywhere from like 30 minutes or so to transfer all this over. I'm on Wi-Fi. If I drop on LAN, and I've tested this before, if I do the same transfer on LAN, it takes around 15 minutes. So not bad at all for a 1 gigabit connection.
Installing apps on CasaOS is surprisingly easy. And the best part is that everything gets installed right onto the NVMe SSD. This means that faster load times, smoother performance, and snappy interface across the board. Whether you're spinning up a Docker container, adding media files, or using Jellyfin, or just dropping in your Nextcloud, CasaOS has you covered. And let's talk about how clean the interface is. CasaOS isn't those bloated dashboards that you have to babysit. You just log in, pick the apps, hit install, and you're running in seconds. Plus, you can easily monitor your resources, can manage storage, and even schedule updates without touching the terminal. So to get quickly started with deploying a home server, CasaOS is a simple yet effective option. So there you go. Now I have a NAS that's running 24/7, and the exact setup has been running for me for the last 2 weeks without any issues. I've even put more than a terabyte's worth of data onto this, and I've transferred data in and out of the system many times just to make sure that if there are any issues, those come up front. Do I recommend doing this? Yes and no. If you're getting started with a home server, then getting CasaOS up and running is probably the simplest solution. It gets you your apps, it gets you your files, and then you can easily transfer and share files across your home network. But if you want a proper NAS system, maybe getting a much more beefier machine with the multiple drives and NVMe SSDs would be a better solution. Running something like TrueNAS Scale is a proper NAS system in my opinion, because you can control so many things in so many different ways. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Stay tuned for more updates, and I'll see you in my next video.